But the NBA was struggling in the 1980s, and how did they change that? Well, this again is a fascinating discussion for me because it speaks to these generation of players like Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, the bad boys of the 1980s, the Detroit Pistons, 1990s. And that's the era that I grew up watching this stuff. And this is when I loved watching the NBA. And this speaks to so much. This speaks to so much about building a business. It speaks so much about what happens when something like the NBA has tremendous talent, success, what that does for future talent. The amount of people that have learned how to play basketball and have learned how to play it well is a direct response to the NBA succeeding and being able to pour money into places and invest in youth sports and all these things and development. And, you've got people out there that are coaching things that Magic Johnson and Larry Bird were never taught because the league, the sport had not evolved and it just hadn't developed yet because it hadn't had the financial success. You need financial success for there to be people to invest their whole lives in becoming coaches, just as an example. And so the 1980s was a tough time for the NBA, but yet they were able to build a humongous fan base starting back in the 1980s and 1990s. And how did they do that? Well, the biggest and most obvious example was the Magic Johnson versus Larry Bird phenomenon. I mean, that was a big deal. Two individuals with tremendous personalities, different in so many ways, and they competed with each other for the national championship in the NCAA national championship, 1979. They competed with each other in the 1980s, Celtics versus Lakers. It was competitive. It was tense. It wasn't a lovey-dovey relationship. They certainly respect each other and are friends of sorts now, but back in the day, that just wasn't how especially Larry Bird was made. And there was trash talking, and there was tension, and there was a rivalry.